A Shtark Tank listener named Akiva recently reached out to me with the following message. Hi Yaakov, I just want to thank you for your amazing new podcast. I've really been enjoying all of the episodes, but I especially enjoyed the first episode with Zevi Reinitz and the recent conversation with Prof. Sokol. I was also wondering if you could interview people in medical fields. These fields may be very time-consuming, but they are also incredibly meaningful and impactful, so it would be interesting to hear how people remain committed to Talmud Torah in those professions. Thanks. Well, Akiva, you made a very solid point. Today's guest is Professor Aaron Allen. He is Chair of Radiation Oncology at Shaare Zedek Medical Center and Deputy Director of the American Medical Program at Tel Aviv University. And, as was requested, we focus on his spiritual pursuits, his journey to connect with Hashem and His Torah in a deep and meaningful way. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Halacha Program. For more info on the Zman, check out the link in the show notes. My name is Yaakov Wolf, and this is Shtark Tank. Shalom Aleichem, Professor Rabbi Dr. Aaron Allen. Welcome to Shtark Tank. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Yaakov.
So we've known each other for quite a while, but I want to even go back to before the time that we knew each other. And maybe you could just start us off by giving a quick bio of your educational background, both from a Torah perspective and also from your professional education.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Boston originally, went to Maimonides school, went to high school at Ramaz, Modern Orthodox High School. And after high school, I was accepted to a 6-year undergrad and medical school program at Boston University. But before that, I spent a year at Yeshiva Takotel, which is now Netiv Aryeh with Rav Bina, learning for a year in Yerushalayim. Came back, did my medical school in Boston, college medical school, and I went on to become a radiation oncologist at the University of Michigan, and then moved back to Boston, where I started my professional career.
And we met during that stint in Boston, beginning your professional career. So can you talk a little bit about your work-life balance, your Torah life balance, your integration between your young medical career and your Torah at that point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I always went to day school. And so there was always, half days of Torah and also of secular studies. And I would say when I was in high school, the secular studies definitely became more important, more focused on getting into college, getting a professional degree. And when I went to yeshiva, I was kind of going with everyone else, sort of spending a gap year, wanting to learn Torah, but not really feeling like that was like the Kihem Chayenu v'Orach Yameinu of my life. And I think my year in yeshiva was very significant, kind of in bringing me back towards really a commitment to learning. I wanted to, at the time, stay for a second year of yeshiva. It didn't really work out with my parents so much. And I came back to my career wanting to do more learning, feeling sort of like I had left Torah behind somewhat in order to go to medical school, go to college, and tried throughout medical school and college to keep up some learning. Sometimes I was giving shiurim on the college campus, being involved in Torah productions, trying to struggle basically to do a little bit of Torah on the side of learning to be a physician. I would say during medical school, and I was definitely in a low point in terms of my Torah learning. And I think once I finished that, I realized that I really need to make a recommitment to Torah learning. But it was always very difficult to fit it in with family, which was starting, work which was very, very demanding and very stressful. So it was something that was sort of on the back burner as important, but not always in the front burner as actually happening. When I was in residency, I sort of became more identified as a physician finally, and I actually started being involved in medical halacha. I was giving a shiur actually once a week to a bunch of doctors where we lived in Detroit, Oak Park, Michigan, and that was sort of a real opportunity for me to dig my teeth more seriously into Torah at that time than I had done really before that.
And can you talk a little more about that low point that you mentioned? Obviously, it's a very, very challenging time of your life, but do you remember anything that you did at that point to tell yourself, like, this is temporary, I'm going to get through this, even though it's a really hard time now, something that kept you going during those toughest of tough times?
The truth is, to be totally honest, I knew that I wanted to do more learning, but I wasn't as despondent as I might have needed to be. In other words, I was living my life. Things were good. I was progressing in my career. I was involved in research and academics in terms of medicine, and Torah was important, but I wasn't like crying at night that I don't have enough time to learn. I think I was not as focused on the importance of learning at that time in my life.
And throughout your journey from that sort of low point to where you are today, do you look back and see any particular moments of inspiration or moments that really shook yourself as far as telling yourself, I really need to grow, I really need to bring Torah more into my life? Or was it a slow, gradual process of constantly adding more and trying to get deeper and closer to God Baruch Hu?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of points. I think that all of the challenges and there were many that I faced professionally, whether it was patients dying or bad outcomes, at work, or challenges, just bringing up a family. All of those caused me to search for something spiritual that would help me to get through the difficult times. And it took a while for me to realize that learning was actually something that could provide spiritual renewal and spiritual sustenance during the most difficult times. I think that sometimes people think, well, if I'm having a difficult time emotionally, whether it was parnasa or whatever it is, I need to find a therapist, which is also not a bad idea sometimes. But really, what I've realized is that Hashem provides us in the Torah all of the spiritual and emotional therapy that we need. And actually, a regular schedule of learning will really lead you into the chizuk that you really need, which I think was a chidush for me. And it sort of developed over time, that realization that regular learning actually provides the best emotional support for all of the things that I was doing.
I really like that idea. Could you give an example of how that plays out in your life?
Sure. So, for example, happened to me, I think last week, we're learning now Daf Yomi and Bava Kama, and had a very difficult time with a negative patient outcome, where one of my colleagues made a mistake, and the patient actually got the wrong treatment, which is a very, very difficult event. And I was really torn up about it, and I felt like I didn't know kind of what to do with myself almost. Being in charge of the department, it's my responsibility, and a very difficult event. And so I thought, I needed really some spiritual help here. Maybe I should learn some Hasidus. That sometimes it's something that gives me a lot of comfort and menuchas nefesh. But I had to learn the daf. I had to complete learning the daf for that day. So I thought, okay, well, that's what I committed to. So at least I'm going to start with that. Maybe I'll learn something else afterwards if it doesn't help. And we were learning in Bava Kama about someone who gives a korban to shecht, to a mumche. It gives an animal to shecht to a mumche. And a simple Rashi says that, at least according to one mandamar, that if a mumcha shechts an animal and he shechts it in the wrong way, it's considered an onus. Why? Because he's a mumcha. He's supposed to know what to do. And all of a sudden, I got tremendous menuchas nefesh. I thought, we're all human. And, even the best physicians or the best professionals can make a mistake. And I was almost in tears from the Rashi and Bava Kama. And I wouldn't have gotten to that if I didn't have sort of a regular kavua limud to do. And it's amazing how many times whatever you're learning, whatever kavua limud you have, sometimes gives you just what you need, because as we believe, Hashem is working behind the scenes. He says, you learn the Torah and I'll take care of the rest. And so it's just an amazing event where really something very yavesh was able to really give me exactly what I needed.
That's really amazing. You mentioned almost in passing your current professional capacity. So just for our listeners, maybe mention what that is, what you're currently overseeing in your medical career, and then we can talk about how you're currently integrating Torah and other parts of Avodas Hashem in that current framework.
Yeah. So right now I'm the chairman of radiation oncology at Shaare Zedek in Jerusalem, which is really a life stream to be able to work in the Holy City and take care of Jerusalem's patients. I also run the Sackler American program at the Tel Aviv University for medical studies, and I've been doing that for a while. And so that's where I'm currently at professionally.
And there are a number of primary elements to your Avodas Hashem and your learning Torah. So let's go through a couple of them. We'll start with Virtual Halacha Program. I do want to thank them because they are helping make this podcast possible. But you, way before they became a podcast sponsor, have been a participant. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what the program is, what it consists of, and then we'll get into a little bit how it impacts your life.
Sure. VHP, the Virtual Halacha Program, has been amazing. I every week as an alumni of Nativ Aryeh get their weekly bulletin before Shabbos and words from Rav Bina and some other information about the yeshiva. And I saw about 4 years ago that they were coming out with a halacha program to basically get smicha or learn halacha lamaisa through the sources, and they were advertising it. And as soon as I saw that, I said, that's definitely for me. It was something online that we did at my own pace, in my own time. And so I immediately signed up to be part of this VHP experience. We've spent the last 4 years learning all of Orach Chaim, Hilchos Shabbos and Be'iyun, Hilchos Brachos, just so many topics. It's been sort of an amazing journey.
Okay, and how exactly does that work? What exactly does the limud consist of?
Right. So basically, Rav Ami Merzel is the Maggid Shir, and the group, the VHP, they send out every week Mar Mekomos for a specific topic. We learn the Mar Mekomos, and then at the end of the week, there's a shir to summarize the lima that we have. And like I said, we started out with both the limit of Ian and Bikiyas. So there's Bikiyas on all of Orach Chaim that we learned Mishnah Brura, basically from Chelik Aleph all the way through to the end to Purim Katan. And in parallel, we learned sugyas in Iyun of Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Brachos, Hilchos of the Chagim, a lot of beautiful sugyas that we were able to cover in Iyun. And then basically after from anywhere from 6 to 8 or 10 shiurim or weeks that we've been learning, there'll be a test on that material to see if we've learned, if we've mastered it, if we've done chazara, etc.
And can you talk about the impact that this program has had on your life? Most people don't end up learning halacha b'iyun at any point in their life if they're a regular professional like you. You have this opportunity, and anyone who wants to join VHP, we'll include the link in the show notes. But talk about how that has changed your life practically.
I have to be honest, I'm not a huge halacha person. Like if I was back in yeshiva and I had a choice between either, let's say, machshava or musar, gemara be'iyun or halacha probably would have been the last thing I would have chosen. This is a little bit more dry, a little bit less interesting in my mind before doing this. And as a result, there were a lot of areas of halacha that sort of I knew sort of the basics, but when it get down to the nitty gritty, I would just kind of like do what everyone else was doing. I wasn't really sure what the actual halacha was, and I obviously could look it up, but I didn't do that. And so this has really brought home sort of, first of all, the type of halachic learning, going from the Gemara down to the poskim, really getting familiar with, all of the Nosei Kelim on the Shulchan Aruch, and actually giving real practical halachos, which I didn't have. And the other thing, which is because of the test, it's forced me to do chazara, which is something that I never liked to do. I was never a big fan of chazara. It's boring. I've already learned it. Let's move on. But I realized how valuable chazara is. That basically, I don't remember anything without doing chazara, and it's so critical to understand the nuances of what we're learning. And as far as how it's impacted my life, it's amazing. I mean, I've brought, we have a whole bunch of boys at home, Baruch Hashem, and basically every week, even almost a couple times a week, I'm talking about the halacha that we're learning in the VHP with my kids. And they're asking questions, what do we do about this thing on Shabbos? Should we say brachos on this? Is it borei b'nei b'samim? Is it borei yotzei b'samim? All of the things that we're learning in the VHP come really mamash home into our house and have become sort of a part of our chinuch that we're doing at home, which is an incredible experience. And I feel like whenever someone talks about like a topic in practical halacha that we've learned, I'm like, oh yeah, I may not remember everything, but at least I know where to look. I know the interest, and in the sugya, it's totally opened my eyes to the importance of learning halacha b'iyun.
And you mentioned before that before VHP, you were able to look things up, which is what a lot of people say, I can look it up. But oftentimes there are things that you don't even know you have to ask a shayla. You don't even realize it's an issue if you haven't actually gone into the sugyas. Do you have any examples of things that you just never realized were an actual halachic thing until you actually learned it properly?
I mean, I could, fill up a couple of podcasts with this. I mean, there's so many things. This time we learned the halachas of netilas yadayim. And of course, from Jew, grow up, you know how to wash netilas yadayim, negel vaser, or netilas yadayim for bread. But, the sensitivity to, how much water needs to be in the cup. I remember we were having a discussion within the VHP about if you're on an airplane and you have those little small cups in the bathroom, is it enough to be able to halachically wash your hands for netilas yadayim in the morning? And it's actually not. You have to actually either get a bigger cup or you have a workaround. And I would never have asked that question. I was basically for any time I was traveling on a plane, I was washing my hands in a small netilas yadayim cup, doing it not according to halacha, and just kind of moving on. And all of a sudden, this small, insignificant halacha, it changed. And so these things about, so what do I need that for? So now I'm doing it right. So I get more brownie points in Shemayim. But the fact that the points of halacha is when you spend the 5 seconds thinking, is this the way halacha says, or is this not the way halacha says? It changes your netilas yadayim from something that you do to something that you're doing avodas Hashem. Because I'm thinking to myself, what does Hashem want me to do? What does the halacha say? And now I'm connecting with the actual mitzvah that I was doing, just kind of by rote. And now I'm actually thinking about it, and it connects me to the Rebbeinu Shalom.
Amazing. The other thing, you mentioned the VHP testing system, which is very, very interesting. Oftentimes we sometimes get sucked into maybe taking the easier route, the lazier route, because it's just sort of natural that if something a little easier, simpler, we go for that. But that oftentimes leads to a lack of fulfillment if you're not really putting in effort into your learning. So it's going to be a lot harder to feel fulfillment. So you are part of a program where you have to work hard. The limud is not an easy limud. You have to really go through the marmakomos. Then you're forced to chazer. You're forced to take a test. So you talk a little bit about that experience of forcing yourself to challenge yourself and the feeling of accomplishment that comes from it.
Yeah, I think the main word here is accountability. I mean, when you take on something and you want to continue with it and you have to test on it, it's not a matter of how much you can remember or how hard you work. We all work hard at all of our different professional lives, but we want to make sure that we're accountable to ourselves. If I say I want to learn this, then I want to make sure that I actually do learn it. And the only way to really do that is when you actually check if you understand something. It would be silly to think that in the world of medicine, in the world of business, someone would learn something and then they would just say, okay, yeah, I kind of know it sort of, I would deal with residents and medical students. Obviously, you need to have an exam. You can't just say, I sort of know about the heart. You actually have to show that you know about the heart. So the same thing is true, I think, with our learning. When I take these tests, it forces me to crystallize my thoughts and to understand sort of the nuances that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't done the testing. I think that it's super important that the testing, and they do make this part of in the VHP, is accessible. It's not something that's meant to weed people out or make people fail or feel bad. But when you actually put the time in, then you can just get the reward for knowing that you actually have garnered that information. And it's mechazik you, and it's strengthening you to know that you're actually making progress. Because that's another thing which is so, so important, is to see that you're making progress, to see that you're actually accomplishing something. It's not for the medals on your shoulder blade or the stars on after your name. It's for the sense of self-fulfillment, that you know that you're good, you know that you're doing something. And you can get that by actually showing yourself that you know. One of the other areas where this has come into fruition is when the war started a couple of months ago. I had 2 son-in-laws that were in the army, and all of the people that I was listening to online were saying you have to do something to protect these people that are out of harm's way. And what can you do if you're not in the army? So I think I could take some more limit on top of that. That's what people had suggested. And it was just the time when we were starting Nezikin in Daf Yomi. And I decided to go back to Daf Yomi, which I had done previous cycles, but it wasn't currently learning. And again, I wanted something that would make me accountable. And I stumbled on this amazing program called Zichru, which has really helped me to stay accountable and get rewards for what I'm learning.
Can you talk a little bit more about Zichru? What exactly is it, and how does it make you feel?
Yeah, so it's just like an unbelievable thing. If you haven't found out about it, you should go to their website. I'm not a paid sponsor, but this is an amazing program run by Rabbi Avram Goldhar and colleagues. Basically, what they do is you learn the daf every day, okay, but they basically distill the essentials of the daf to 3 important points for every daf. And then there's a short shiur about those 3 important points. And then each daf has a specific siman, or like a story that goes along with the daf. And they've done it illustrated and animations. And so what happens is, and you do chazara with this, and you remember the 3 points on the daf. So no matter what daf you're on, you can say, oh, today is daf kaf aleph. So that the siman for daf kaf aleph, as an old Bostonian, is ka. Like that's, so Bostonians say ka. So that kaf aleph is car. So there's a picture on daf kaf aleph of a demon driving in a car. And that reminds you that if someone's staying in your house, when you're not there, that there's a hana that you're getting from that, from keeping the demons away, from being in your empty house. So it's just an amazingly funny and quirky program that enables mamash to remember. We're almost finishing Bav Kama, all of the points in the daf with again some effort, but really it's a fun thing, and it helps the learning become fun, which is really important.
Okay, I want to transition to the last part of our conversation. You mentioned in passing before the solace that you find in learning Hasidus. I don't know about you, but I also went to my Maimonides school for elementary school. I don't think I'd ever heard of Rav Nachman or any form of Hasidus back in on Philbrick Road. But you did discover it at some point later in life. Do you remember what it was that ended up bringing you to the gates of Hasidus?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, this is going back more about 10 years or more. I was sort of not, I guess, yet in midlife, but I was, working in a job, family, all of those things. And despite what I said about Daf Yomi, I was really looking for something that would address, moments of pain and looking for sort of menuchas hanefesh. And at the time where I was living in Yad Binyamin, there was a lot of talk about Breslov Hasidus, and even we had an English class on my block. And I walked into the class one day and was basically abducted by Rabbi Nachman. I mean, I was so overwhelmed by the depth of the Torah of Breslov and of all of Hasidus, of how it speaks to the soul of the person. So many times when I felt down and sort of having challenges, personal or professional, Hasidus just gives you that energy and that motivation to keep going. I've since become very connected to Breslov Hasidus. I've been to Uman for Rosh Hashanah for the many years in a row. Recently, it's something a very part of our home life. The dancing, the simcha, the solace of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and all of his Talmidim, and it's something which has totally changed my life and has brought me into a much better place than I was ever in before I met up with Hasidus and all the teachings of the Talmidei Baal Shem.
Wow. Throughout your journey, you keep on talking about these various things that you've done to really make Avodas Hashem a central and real part of your life, whether it's the virtual Alcha program, the Zichru, and the Hasidus, all in their own time, in their own space. Do you have any other words of advice for people who might be in their professional life, they're in the grind, they're hustling, they're doing their best, but they feel that something is missing in their spiritual lives? What do you think is the first thing that they should be thinking about in order to start making that journey onto incorporating Kadosh Baruch Hu in a very real way, despite all of the challenges that the professional lifestyle can bring?
Yeah, I think it's something that we know, but we sometimes put to the back of our mind. I mean, the Ribbono Shel Olam has given us the Torah and given Limud Torah and Avodas Hashem, not as an all, as something which, I was born from, what can I do? I got to put on tefillin, I got to keep Shabbos, I don't want to break with traditions, I don't want to embarrass my parents. No, but actually the Torah is Magni Umatzli. It's something which protects us and saves us. And I think that we have, as we've always been told, the first class ticket in our back pocket to the solution to all of our problems. But it requires a serious commitment, not only of time, but also of our heart. If we give our heart to the Ribbono Shel Olam, if we look for our solutions within the Torah, problems with Shalom Bayis, problems with our children, problems with professionals, whatever it is, it's in the Torah, it's there. And once you realize that it's to your benefit and not just a burden that you have to do because what can you do, you were born from, it opens an entirely new world. And so, as we always say, they've always told us when we were back in day school, if you make time for Torah, you'll find more time for Torah. Sort of was an old adage. But I think it's really true is that when you put all of the elements of Avodas Hashem in your life, you find that you have more time for Avodas Hashem, and you find that you need less time for all kinds of ridiculousnesses that weren't really helping you to escape from the challenges of everyday life. So I think if you're kind of struggling and you're like, oh my God, I don't have time for Shaare, I don't have time for this, you'll see that as soon as you start committing to something, not only will you have time for it, but it will be that which helps you with all of the other things that you're doing in your life.
Wow. Someone once told me, and this is easier to say than to actually do. I try to do it. I don't do it so well. But someone once told me, if you're rushing into mincha in the middle of a busy day, stop, take 3 seconds and think, this is an opportunity to connect to my Father, and not think about like, oh, I have to run in and grab this mincha before my next meeting, but take 3 seconds and realize that this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us the door to come in and talk to him, and that can help you flip that switch in having the right perspective on what we're doing as religious Jews throughout our busy lives.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, we have something, again, it's not only Hasidus, but it's something which Rabbi Nachman really developed, which is called Hitbodedut, where a person spends some time, whether it's a minute or 5 minutes or an hour every day, really talking to Hashem. And it's amazing, how much strength and solace you can get from that, because Hashem is really listening to us. Hashem really wants to hear our problems. Just like you said, like if you call your father or you talk to your father, Hashem is there for us. And the moment we start connecting, he connects back, and we feel that sheltering and that love. And I think that's really what it's all about. And when we learn Torah, it's Hashem speaking to us. And we shouldn't just see it as, okay, let's say the VHP, I have, this to do, I have that to do. Okay, another checkbox. No, I want to connect to the Ribono Shel Olam. I want to tap in to all the riches that he has. And the way he says to do it is through the Torah. So when I do that, or I talk to Hashem without learning, then all of a sudden, I realize, okay, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Why am I trying so hard? Why am I, dealing with all of these challenges? It's because I want to be more closer to the Ribono Shel Olam. I want to do what he says. I want to be in his image. One of the things that Rabbi Nachman speaks about is this idea of Ana Zamin Lemeheve, that I am present and available. Everyone wants to be available to the Ribono Shel Olam for whatever he has in store for us. Because once we're available for what he has in store for us, then we'll be much happier with what we actually get, when we're not actually thinking about what we need rather than what he needs of us.
What a beautiful closing message. Professor Dr. Allen, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's my pleasure, Yaakov. Good luck.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Shtark Tank. If you're still listening at this point, that means that you've enjoyed. Please take a moment to give us a 5-star review, make sure that you're subscribed, and share this episode with a few friends. I want to thank our production team, Yoni Schwartz, Yitzhak Schmidman, and Yossi Book. Until next week, keep on steiging, Chevra.